Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the studio live here. You're here with Jason and Alexander. We are on all platforms,
Live.
LinkedIn, X, YouTube, any place that matters, you're going to find us.
And that's the CEO of Tartle.
Yep, CEO of Tartle, and Jason Rigby is the Chief Conscious Marketing Officer. So we appreciate everybody that is tuning in or watching this after the fact. Today, we want to have a little bit of discussion around the Tartle Real Intelligence API. And this is a free-to-use product, free-to-use API, that AI firms or ML firms tie into to ethically source data directly from people all over the world through the Tartle marketplace. So, Jason, you want to bring us through a little bit of the key differentiators we have here?
Yeah, I wanted to get into authenticity of data, how Tartle enables you to access real nuanced human data that is not just collected, because that's the easy part. It's with explicit consent.
Yeah.
Tracked all the way through. Can you get into the authenticity of data?
Yeah, so by design, the Tartle technology allows for provenance of the data to shine through. So there's an internal blockchain that happens on the marketplace. So there's a stored record showing that Jason Rigby has taken data, which he rightfully owns as a data creator, put it inside this data vault, okay? And then from there, when someone comes in to source that data or purchase it from Jason, Jason gives explicit permission and consent to share a copy of that data to the person requesting it. So for companies, AI companies that are using the Real Intelligence API, every single time you make a call to the API, doing a request to people like Jason for that specific piece of data, it's going to come with that record of consent for that data file that's getting shared back to you. And when that occurs, the beauty of it, you get this authentic piece of vetted information coming directly from the individual who owns it. But now you own a copy of that data at time with proof of purchase and proof of consent, and you get that asset and you can use it for as long as you want in the future. That is now your data.
Right. Yes.
Okay, because there's an exchange that is occurring. So through the API, you can make these calls automatically to source thousands or hundreds of thousands of JSONs and get that authentic data directly from them.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think with authenticity of data that's really important is that we can capture complexities of human behavior that's often missed by synthetic or scraped data sets.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get into the complexities.
Yeah, one of the major unlocks here is that when it comes to Tartle technology, the human comes first. And because the human comes first, they are the ones that act as all these individual conduits that build up this longitudinal repository of themselves. So over time, they're always building more and more about themselves and storing it in one place secure to them. Now, the benefit of that is the data of this person is not scattered all over the internet. You can have a one-stop shop as an AI ML firm to come in and say, I'm going to use this API to tag directly into these people and the changes in their life over time because they're actively storing it. Now, if you asked a computer system to go out there, if you asked all these different commercial businesses to work together to share their data and create a unified center for people to store and access it, they would never do it. They're in a world of silos. They keep it separately on purpose. So what we've done here is when you put people first, we'll take the amalgamation, all of the different points of everything they interact with in the internet and put it into one secure data vault under their control.
Yes.
So now it removes the silos and it opens up that access.
Yeah, and I want to get into the Tesla robots, the suit and stuff. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But with authenticity data, finally, it minimizes risk of model collapse in real-world AI applications.
Yeah, because as I was saying, because when the data is longitudinal over time, and it's actively being generated from novel events that occur in a human's life. So let's make this simple. When Jason wakes up in the morning, he's always doing something, but there's changes that happen through cause and effect in his life and changes in his behavior. Now, if there was a model of Jason, I have to take Jason's history and then synthesize it to expect or anticipate or guess what Jason's going to do in the future, but that's not always the case because humans are always changing and evolving, albeit slow, but it does occur. So Tartle allows for that novel data capture. So when your system is ingesting data through the Real Intelligence API, you get to train it on things that are always adjusting those weights and always giving it new novel inputs that make the system more robust. Because the more variance it gets inside of it, the better the system will be. And you need people to come in and give feedback for what is actually valuable, because then you have proper assigning of weights rather than pre-assumed weighting that would occur when you're training a model that happens today on synthetic data. So you're actually I'll shut up in a second.
No, you're fine.
You'll actually reduce the model's fragility. You reduce your error rates when you tie into the Real Intelligence API. Why wouldn't you want to use a system, Jason, that makes your models more robust, reduces the liability of your data sourcing, and gives you the option to grow and adapt with society, your model over time?
Yeah. And the data points are endless, and we'll get into that, but real-time human feedback, RTHF. One of the things that we're seeing with Tesla is that they're having people to better train their robots, because, the goal is to have a robot in each home. And we did a whole episode on that. But what's interesting to me is they're having people wear suits, and they're paying them, like $5,000 a month or something like that to wear the suit so they can train. But you can wear the suit, which is basically an IoT device.
That's right.
Tons of, and you can pull that data, but you don't know the intent in what's going on. You have no idea of how they feel.
No.
And, like if Tesla would come to Tartle and be like, hey, we want to work alongside of you because we need to understand real-time human feedback, not just from an IoT suit.
No, because the suit...
But we could, in real time, ask the people, how are they feeling when they do this? What is it? There's so many different variables that you get when it's human feedback.
Right. So when you're dealing with a suit, the suit deals with knowledge that is quite explicit, things that happen on the outside. It's things that can be seen and easily measured. But the qualitative aspects for humans in their decision-making, or even why they go about using a knife a certain way to cut fruit, like what is it about that mechanic? Why have you cut it like this? Oh, your grandmother taught you to cut it like that, or I don't know. But the actual rich nuances of why an action is occurring is missed when you're only collecting data from a suit. That's like watching someone in front of the green screen, they put the dots on them and then they put them in CG. Yeah. Well, that doesn't give you all the other nuance. Like if you had a film in Hollywood that was just capturing those things, but had no dialogue, no thought process of like a lead character, well, then you're just watching a figure move around the screen. The movie would be worthless. All of the value happens actually internally in the brain, but the mechanisms of movement, which are very, very dynamic and special for human beings, which are hard to map into robotics, that's what they're trying to capture. But that's only what I would say is 30 to 40% of the total picture of what needs to be captured.
I also think the problem that we have with these models is that it creates a bias.
Right.
And you can correct these biases in real time. That's the beautiful part.
Well, check this out. The people that are wearing the suit, do you think they're going to be acting the same?
I got into that. I didn't want to get too much into that, but
no, but you need to.
It's so true, because if you can get the data that corrects that, then you can make a calculation based off of because you don't want the robot to look awkward all the time.
No, why are you acting?
The person's awkward in there. Yeah,
they're like,
so you just train the robot.
They're like perfect posture, and I'm trying to do everything perfect. You're destroying the model. The thing needs you to fuck up.
Yeah. Exactly.
It needs to understand why you do things a specific way, but in order to account for that variability or that error, you have to source data directly from the human being's consciousness, essentially.
Yeah, and the beautiful part about Tartle is not only is it increasing transparency is what we're talking about there, but it increases trust. And then that in turn allows the AI development process to scale.
That's right, because you get a loop.
Yes.
It's like, okay, I generate something. Someone wants that from me. I say, yes, you can have it. And then they give me something in return. And then when that happens again, I'm more apt to do that process over and over because there's a more ethical and balanced given that occurs.
Yeah.
And the beauty about the Real Intelligence API is you can automate that feedback loop. You can build that trust. Your server can start building trust with people that would share that data with you in an automatic format. Why wouldn't you want to do something like that?
That's the cool part. And next is cost-effective data acquisition. This is a big one.
Yeah.
Whenever you could go on Bloomberg or CNBC at any moment and you talk to these AI firms and their burn rate and the cash they're going through, and then all these data sets that they're trying to, create amongst each other. And then it's just crazy. And I think the Streamline API, not only does it reduce data collection costs, but I think it's pretty significant. We've heard stories of up to 45%.
Oh, it's massive. Now, check this out. When you go to train a model on, say, synthetic data, because people can't get data anywhere, people use things like Amazon Turk When you do that, it's going to cost you $85,000 to $120,000 just to start on your data acquisition to get the model off the ground. And that's on synthesized data. So you're buying something that's already riddled with error rates.
Mhm.
And most of the time, if you're building a new model and you're asking for synthesized data, it's synthesizing data for something that really requires novel data. So you're using old regurgitated stuff that really wasn't truly built for your model, and you're paying through the nose for it.
Yeah.
So what happens is you have to pay multiple times over to get essentially these enriched data sets, but they're not giving you what you need when you could have gone directly to the source ahead of time using a real intelligence API through Tartle and source that data that could immediately begin training your model. And because it's so rich, because it's so contextual, the volume required is significantly less. So you have a huge reduction in cost.
Yes.
And you can see earlier in time if your model's actually going to work or requires other adjustments.
Well, not only does it accelerate time to market, for the project itself, and we've had several companies that's mentioned it's up to 60%. But what you're talking about is it allows for more efficient resource allocation in AI development.
That's exactly right. Because for AI, if a lot of your cost outlay comes to building a model, sourcing your data, and then training that thing over time. Now, when you need to train it on sensitive information, companies have to spend an extra premium to scrub that data of identifiable information. That's a huge cost on top. There's no reason to do that if you source it directly from people and you get it permission from them. So now think about all the context and richness you are using. And think about if you wanted to train a model that was super bespoke to individual people, even patients in healthcare. You'd want to have all that individualized data about them. So the only way you could do that is come to a system like ours.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a very large company, one of the largest in the
World.
in the world, come to us, having these same questions. And this is the big one that I know you just had a phone call with attorneys on this.
Yeah.
Is ethical and compliant data practices.
Yep.
So let's get into explicit user consent, transparency in data usage, compliance with GDPR, CCPA, and all these international regulations. Let's get into concerns on the ethical.
So when it comes to larger organizations, for so long, data practices have been sketchy.
Yeah. Wild West.
And if someone was ever delivering data that was very identifiable on sensitive information, they would question me like, where did you get this?
Mm-hmm.
How did you get this? Because what happens is they were sourcing that data as a third party and not the rightful owners of it. So people were using it, but that's tapered off over time. And all these stupid products had to be created to fill that gap in the market because no one created an ethical mechanism to go directly to people to request that data from them. So what we deal with is when you create a technology that captures permission and consent every single time on every iota of data, it puts you ahead of the regulation.
Yes.
Regulation is there for the management of data when third parties are managing first-party information. This is zero parties, like zero-party data, being managed by the data creator of that data.
And I think this is really important because when we get into user ownership and control of their data, people need to understand this. So it's kind of like I own an Airbnb. Now, I own the property. I own the building. Legally, I own that. But legally, I can also enter into a contract with someone through Airbnb Marketplace to have them live in my home for, a week, 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with data. The ownership of the data is the user.
It's still
They own their data. They're just letting you.
They're giving you a copy.
Yes. Yeah.
They're not giving you all of their data, all of them. They're giving you a copy in time of a piece of that information. And if you want to buy more copies in time, longitudinally, you can do so using the Real Intelligence API. But when it comes to the principles of ethics, right, and being compliant with regulation, this is beyond it. Tartle, using a technology like ours, puts you beyond where regulation is today. Because you have that explicit consent that comes every single time directly from a person when they permission a piece of data to you. And they're saying, you own this copy of my data in time. That is now yours. You have paid me for it. I have given you that copy. There's an exchange that occurs. That is now your asset. These are now my funds. And that's it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And I think this last point, and this is a really good one where we excel at Tartle. We're in over 226 countries. Is a diverse and high quality global data.
Yeah.
And the network that we have built, within our users. I mean, you just had somebody say, hey, I need millions of data points in India.
Yeah.
And guess what? Demographics, geographics, not an issue.
Not
We're working with a very large company to source data from Nigerians in rural areas.
Mhm.
So imagine.
The power of our system. And in the early days, people are like, you guys are crazy. What do you mean you want every country on earth using this? Well, we saw value amongst all human beings equally. Regardless of what country they sat in, there is value in the way these people think, walk, talk, and act. Okay? So, in order to capitalize on the benefits of so many people all over the place, we had to build a system that was hyper efficient at sifting through different demographics or characteristics of people. Now, the Real Intelligence API allows what would take full teams of data scientists. You can do it automatically. And the process is called map reduction. So you can take very large pools of people and automatically reduce down to very selected targets of whatever quantity you want and whatever characteristic, and say, those are the people I want to source data from.
Yes, exactly.
You cannot do that as efficiently anywhere else in the world. And you can do it on absolutely any characteristic, because the self-identification principles of people say that this is who I am, come choose me. So things that would naturally be off the bar by targeting people based on religion, race, physical characteristics, disease states, people say, these are the things I have. Come to me. I'm looking for more opportunities to share because this is the picture of my life.
Well, it's so interesting, too, because we had a company come to us wanting to have a conversation about energy drinks in South America, right?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because in Mexico, orange flavor is really popular. They have those orange sodas and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where you get into Brazil, some of the other areas, Argentina, it's different. So, you know, that's, I think, as far as when we look at populations and the different various populations and then use cases in those, that's where we shine.
There's a lot of power. And the benefit here is that when you have diversity in your data sourcing, you have a diversity and robustness in your AI algorithm. Your model becomes that much stronger because you get a larger array of all these new novel inputs that you couldn't find anywhere else. A lot of the data sets that are already available online, say on companies like Hugging Face that give you a couple data sets to train your model, everybody's using that. You already have natural biases built in. Our system is designed to reduce bias as much as possible.
Well, the worst part too is it's being reinforced.
Of course it is, because that's all they're using.
So if I'm training and reinforcing models, and then other companies are doing the same,
Yep.
Then guess what happens with the bleed through?
Mm-hmm.
And they've talked about this in multiple times. It's like we've had to scrap the whole,
Right.
the whole model. It's like,
Do you know what's I find interesting about this whole thing, Jason? If humanity would take all of our effort and resources and create some focus, we would probably jump by leaps and bounds. But there's so much self-interest, and there's so many people and businesses trying to fill the gaps from the mistakes and fuck-ups they had before, that they're creating all these other products and these markets are created for it. We're wasting resources. We need to choose the simplest and most direct route. And what's funny is when we get into these conversations with large corporate entities, they're like, it's that simple.
Well, it's so funny. Whether people are religious or not doesn't matter. But there's a scripture that says, Jesus actually talked about this. He said, can the blind lead the blind, or they both fall in a ditch?
They both fall in a ditch.
And that's what's happening.
No, that's what it is. And so we're like, hey, look, we got a lantern for you.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And it's really this.
We're the hermit with the lantern.
It's really this simple. We've just made this bridge, and we're going to walk you across it. If the thing you need is right here, go to it directly. It's unfathomable for me to think that, I'll call out the larger corporate folks, people that sit in these, big corporate entities, making good money.
Yeah.
They don't go to dinner at shitty places.
No.
They want to know where their food comes from, right? They want to source it appropriately. All these things, like even their expensive kitchens, right, with their big chunk block wood countertops, they want to know where that wood was sourced from, even their furniture. Well, why aren't you doing the same thing with where your data's coming from? You want to know that, but there's simplicity in understanding the supply chain of that information.
It's almost like this whole quantity versus quality thing, and then it's the hoarding of data. It's like, okay, this is the Wild West. So because, we know data's, the view of it turning into a commodity. Let's almost let me hoard this commodity. But if you can have a bunch of chaos sitting in a room, but unless you know how to organize that chaos, it's useless. So you don't even want to walk in the door.
use the Real Intelligence API and get your chaos in order.
That's simple.
It's really not that difficult. It's really not that difficult. Find simplicity in what you're doing. Realize it's not that hard, and get ahead of your competition. At the end of the day, it all boils down to doing one thing, and that's the right thing. Everything else you're doing by not using our tech is doing the wrong thing. And I congratulate some of the firms that are forward-thinking enough to do the right thing, that have come to us.
Yes.
Smart.
Yeah, it's smart. Yeah. And also it allows us to scale, and ethically you're doing a good thing.
Yeah, you're not helping.
Oh, imagine that.
You're helping so many people.
You're actually going directly to the source, the human, and then you're paying them.
Yeah, think about it as almost like a philanthropic enterprise at the same time.
It's almost that. I mean, you're well, we've talked about it, Tartle eventually becoming a source of income for people all across the globe.
Well, it's quickly rising to that.
Yeah.
Very fast.
So, I mean, from a philosophical standpoint, that is doing good.
And why wouldn't you want to do that? Wouldn't you want to say as a company, we will tell you how many lives you have impacted by sourcing data through us?
Yeah.
Don't you want that? Don't you want that on a report? Don't you want to send that to your investors?
100%.
Don't you want to tell the public we're doing the right thing? Do the right thing when everyone else is doing the wrong thing.
I think it pays off dividends in the long term instead of with this race for AI. What's happening, and you know this as well as I do, whenever we get into a race, and you'll see this all the time at the New York Marathon, they have all the cheating routes and stuff, and then there's people that have maps, and it's like at the end of the day, yeah, you may have came in second, but you cheated.
You didn't gain anything.
You cheated.
Yeah,
it's not real.
No, it's totally unreal.
You didn't complete the marathon.
And
you didn't do what you're supposed to do.
Think about the effort required to cheat. The effort required to do the wrong thing. So many people are biting for your attention, giving you technologies to say, hey, we'll help you get data, we'll do this. No, just go to the people that want to give you their data.
And go to the place where the data provenance is legit.
It's legit.
You don't know where, like a lot of these data brokers, there's people try to put us in that box, and I hate that because we're not a data broker.
No.
But it's like, where did they get the data from?
Where did it come from?
Sketchy sites that they have out there where they're promising things. Where did the data come from?
Yeah.
Ask that question. Where did this data come from? And you have records of consent.
Yeah, and did you compensate these people for this information? No, of course not. Of course not. We have a patent. There's literally a patent for exactly what we're talking about. All of these things, all of this capture, all this consumer empowerment, it's literally a patent for doing the right thing.
And it protects you because we know what you and these governments are doing. They're cracking down on data.
So when they come back to you, say, here's the original data file. Here's all the records of consent.
Yes.
Pound sand.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and why would they want to attack? You're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You should be like, no, you should look at my competitor. They're not using Tartle.
Yeah, and it's so silly because we've had conversations with these government entities, and it's so funny because it's kind of like, oh, wow, this is awesome. From a government standpoint, this is the answer.
Yeah.
From a corporate standpoint, it's confusing, don't want to take the time, don't understand it. But evolving and adapting is how you scale. Evolving and adapting is how you grow. Why wouldn't you? Ethically, it makes sense.
Take the time.
Economically, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's making your models faster. Show me the loss here.
That's right.
Show me explain to me a loss for using Tartle data.
I literally can't. That's
what I'm saying. It's like, it's a win-win for everyone.
I smoke my own dope. I literally sell my own data through Tartle.
Yeah, exactly. You're a data dealer instead of
Go find a bunch of other people out there that are running their entities or like creating products and be like, do you use this? Do you use this thing that you made? No, probably not.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Sketchy too. When you go on these other data websites, it just feels like I'm like on a backstreet shop buying like a fake Louis Vuitton or something. That feeling is that, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. When you purchase data, it's kind of like the icky. Like everybody kind of has, I don't know, government has kind of put that on there. But if I took a microphone right now, we're in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I went downtown to the plaza and I started asking people about data, it's going to be negative.
That's all.
I'm going to say my privacy. I don't have privacy. I don't know. I'll ask them, this large company's using your data. Do you know what they're using it for? No. You signed a consent form, this long form that you had to click on, click. How did that go for you? What do you think they're doing with your data after you sign that? It's going to be bad.
Every time.
Every single person's going to have a bad viewpoint. Why would you not use Tartle for that?
Could you imagine being the one person that shows up and said, oh, we're doing the right thing? They'd be like, I feel a little bit different.
I could walk up to the same people and say, hey, would you like to get paid for your data? Everyone's going to say yes.
Absolutely, they would.
You're not getting paid now, but would you like to? Hey, we have this AI firm that will pay you $500 for your DNA records.
Right.
Really? Where do I sign up?
That's exactly.
My girlfriend, she was like, when is this happening?
People ask us, yeah, I bet. How many sketchy back alleys you been in buying handbags?
Exactly.
No, the truth of the matter is, and then people look at you, they're like, well, what's the catch? I'm like, well, there's no catch. If there was a catch, this would never succeed.
It's a marketplace of data.
That's all it is.
It's an exchange.
If you use Amazon, use Tartle.
It's the same.
If you're buying
data.
products that show up in brown packages, buy data that shows up
It's really simple.
package free.
Yeah.
Instantaneous.
It's so simple.
Oh my gosh. It's great. It's good stuff.
I love it.
Anything else we need to talk about?
No, I think we've ruined everything.
Yeah, I think we have.
We've totally ruined it.
Yeah, I think everything's upside down now. All right. Thanks very much for joining us today in the studio, everybody. We will talk to you soon.